Hello, Linda. Ken's funeral is about to start. You're not really planning on not coming, are you? Excuse me, what are you talking about? Ken has passed away. You got a call from Marissa yesterday, right? I'm coming to pick you up, so get ready. It's been 3 years since I divorced my husband. Out of the blue, I received a call from my mother-in-law, whom I hadn't been in touch with for years, telling me to attend my ex-husband's funeral. Logically, it makes no sense to invite an ex-wife to her former husband's funeral after several years have passed. But what does she mean by, "You got a call from Marissa"? My ex-husband was supposed to have died a year ago. Happening to be off from work, I, confused and not understanding the situation, got dressed in mourning clothes just in case. 30 minutes later, the doorbell rang insistently. Come on, we're going. It's outrageous not to show up at the funeral of a husband you once relied on, even if you're divorced. That funeral? You mean the first anniversary, right? My mother-in-law frowned. What? The funeral is about to start. Why would it be the first anniversary? Why am I not on the same page with my mother-in-law? A year ago, I was directly informed by Marissa, my ex-husband's current wife, of his passing. My husband passed away. I didn't contact you because I didn't want you to attend the funeral. But since you came to pay your respects, I thought I should let you know. At that time, I put $200 into a condolence envelope I had at home, intending it for incense money, and handed it over. When I mentioned this, my mother-in-law clicked her tongue quietly and furrowed her brows even more deeply. Just get in the car. Where's Alex? I'm not bringing Alex. I don't want him to see. Marissa. Without saying anything more, my mother-in-law put me in the passenger seat and headed straight for the funeral home. With the early passing of my ex-husband as the starting point, I was clueless about what was happening, yet I was being dragged into an unimaginable situation. I'm Linda, 35 years old, a single mother with a 3-year-old son, supported by my parents. I live at home and work as an office worker at a local real estate management company. Now, I find the lively and enjoyable child rearing at my parents' home fulfilling. But when my husband demanded a divorce 3 years ago, I felt as though my world had ended. Who could have imagined being abandoned right after giving birth, with a newborn in tow? Now, I'm grateful that I was able to start raising my child at my parents' house immediately after being discharged from the hospital, living happily ever since. I met my ex-husband through my aunt's introduction. Linda, there's a wonderful person I think you should meet. My aunt, who's close with my mom, occasionally comes over for chats. Without any preamble, she dropped this suggestion, nearly causing me to spit out my tea in surprise. My aunt runs a small restaurant and is known among her patrons as the matchmaking aunt, having successfully paired off several couples who ended up getting married. There's a relative of a regular customer, a son who's over 35 and still hasn't had any marriage prospects. I had him come to the restaurant once, and I must say he's not only good-looking but also has a great personality. Plus, he works at a major company. It was clear that my aunt was highly recommending him. She first approached me, a single woman past 30, with this proposal. While I wasn't actively seeking a relationship, I was aware of my unremarkable and dull existence. Out of respect for my aunt, I decided to take a leap and go along with her suggestion. On the day, as I headed to the hotel lounge where we agreed to meet, my future husband was already there, waiting. True to my aunt's word, he was a handsome man in a well-fitted suit with a refreshing smile. After exchanging greetings, he asked me with a somewhat serious look, "Do you seriously consider marriage, Linda?" Not fully understanding his intention, I decided to be honest. I'm not against the idea, but to be honest, I came today to honor my aunt's request. Hearing that, my husband let out a relieved sigh and said, "That's good." He was 3 years older than me, not in a rush to get married, and like me, had come to meet out of respect for a relative's wishes. Perhaps freed from the pressure of matchmaking, we both relaxed, and conversation flowed naturally between us. Maybe that was a good sign. It's strange how fate works. Two people with no initial intention of marrying ended up getting married within a year. From the beginning of our marriage, my husband's work kept him busy, often coming home late at night. I hadn't dreamed of a sweet honeymoon phase, but it felt lonely starting our life together with him, rarely around. I'm sorry it's like this even though we're newlyweds. I believe this is a critical time for me to work hard, so I hope you can bear with it. I'll let you know on the days I can come home, so don't worry about preparing meals for me. Otherwise, I don't have experience working in a large corporation, but according to him, socializing is crucial for advancement. I understand, but don't overdo it, okay? Yeah, thank you. The loneliness I felt during the weekday initially soon became normal, and I found myself getting used to it after just a month. Not having to rush home from work to prepare dinner was a relief. Moreover, my husband made sure to be home on weekends, valuing our time together by going out or dining together. Our relationship with my in-laws was, for better or worse, almost non-existent. You're married and a separate household now, so you two should make your decisions. From our initial greeting, my in-laws were indifferent and never interfered in our affairs. In a way, I think our marriage started off smoothly. Nearly a year into our marriage, I found out I was pregnant. I'm happy, my husband said, but his demeanor became more distant as days passed. As my pregnancy progressed, he started to spend weekends away from home, leaving me alone more frequently. The severe morning sickness and quitting my job due to the pregnancy were significant factors. Hey, let's go look at baby stuff soon. We need to start getting ready. I've got something on this weekend. You go ahead, pick whatever you like. Perhaps it was the hormonal changes making me emotionally unstable, but every time he said things like that, I felt a surge of sadness. Hey, this is your child too. Let's think about this together. Come on, I'm busy, you know. It's your child too, so you should prepare yourself. You have time during the day, so just go by yourself. Every time I brought up the topic of our child, my husband became increasingly irritable and raised his voice. Even though I realized a gap was forming between us, I felt powerless to do anything about it. Yet at that time, I still believed that the birth of our child would bring about a change in him. When labor started, my husband was nowhere to be found, despite numerous attempts to contact him. There was no response to my calls or messages. I called my mother and then headed to the hospital by taxi, where I safely gave birth to a boy. After waking up, I contacted my husband again, and he said, "Well done. It's pointless for me to be there now, isn't it? Let me know when you're being discharged. I'll come to pick you up." Hearing that provided me with a bit of relief. During my hospital stay, both my parents and my in-laws came to see the baby, taking turns holding him and saying, "He's so cute." Even my usually indifferent in-laws seemed genuinely happy at that moment. Although I was surrounded by happiness, the one person I wished most to be there, my husband, was absent. In the end, my husband never visited the hospital, not even once, and I found myself unable to share my feelings or seek advice from anyone. On the day of discharge, my husband came to pick me up from the hospital room at the time I had told him. As soon as he entered the room, I handed him our sleeping son without a word. For a moment my husband looked surprised, but then silently stared at his face, standing still. "The name's Alex, right? Hoping for a bright future." I was surprised that my husband had thought of a name for our son. I thought it was a good name. Surely everything will be okay. At that moment, I couldn't help but believe that a fun and happy future with our baby awaited us. However, my hopes were shattered in an instant. Returning home for the first time in a week, I found a pair of high heels with ribbons I had never seen before at the entrance. Entering the living room, there was a young woman wearing a short dress. I want a divorce. I've realized I don't want children after all. Without a chance to sit down, my husband said this and thrust divorce papers in front of me. Why didn't you say something sooner? The child is already born, and why bring me all the way here if you wanted a divorce? It can't be helped, right? Marissa said she wanted to meet you and apologize. I felt dizzy hearing my husband say this with a smirk on his face. I thought it might be nice to have a family and make a home for the sake of my career, but when I actually saw the pregnancy, I just felt like I couldn't handle it. What is he even talking about? Wait, what do you mean? So you're saying the marriage itself was for the sake of your career? That's right. You were the type to obediently follow what I said. It was convenient having you around, not just for companionship, but like a housekeeper for my needs, while I still wanted to have my fun. I stared at my husband in disbelief. But I just can't do the kid thing. I don't want my time taken up by children. I was so shocked I couldn't find the words to respond. I had no idea he was this kind of person. I never imagined his late nights were spent with other women. The memories of what I thought were 2 happy years of marriage suddenly seemed tainted. Well, I did learn that being married helps with social credibility. So I've decided to remarry this one who agrees with me on not wanting kids. Plus, she's prettier than you. With that, my husband pulled the woman closer by the shoulder. I'll pay you alimony and child support around the standard rate. Just send me the bill or whatever later. I'm really sorry it's come to this, ma'am, the woman said with a smug look, her apology lacking any sincerity. She probably wanted to see my devastated face. That's why, in front of this woman alone, I refused to let myself cry. The poor baby being born into this. Really so sad. Feeling infuriated by her pitiful gaze directed at my son, I snatched the divorce papers my husband was holding out. I'll file these myself. Filled with misery, I wanted nothing more than to leave that place as quickly as possible. I'll send your stuff to your parents' house later. Thanks for everything until now. Bye-bye. Good luck being a single mom. Every word from that irritating woman made me want to punch her. But I silently turned and walked towards the entrance. The cardboard boxes stacked in the Japanese-style room next to the entrance were probably my belongings. They're all set to get rid of me. Holding my baby, I suppressed my frustration and left the familiar apartment behind. Despite my initial fury, by the time I reached my parents' house, I was utterly dejected and emotionless. With a blank expression, I started to explain what had happened, and my parents exploded with emotion on my behalf. "That idiot!" My father's face, red with anger and ready to storm out and confront my husband, was held back by my mother and me. My father's anger was so intense, it seemed unlikely that merely hitting someone would satisfy him. As I tried to hold him back, tears naturally started to fall. "Damn it!" I was overwhelmed by frustration, sadness, anger, and despair. All the emotions I had been suppressing surged forth, and before I knew it, I found myself crying uncontrollably like a child. It was only when both my parents hugged me and cried with me that I began to regain my composure. I decided to inform my in-laws of the divorce over the phone. It pained my heart, especially since they had been happy about their grandchild's birth at the hospital just the other day. "So, if that's what you two have decided, I won't say anything. It's a shame about the grandchild. I'm sorry for what Ken did to you," my mother-in-law apologized. But she did not suggest trying to mend the marriage. Perhaps her son's marriage and his affairs were never truly of concern to my in-laws from the start. Afterward, through a lawyer, I filed for alimony and child support, and the divorce was finalized without issue. The alimony for both of us was transferred in one lump sum by my husband. He probably wanted to settle everything quickly to move on with his remarriage. We agreed on a child support payment of $800 every month, but there was no demand for visitation rights with our son. Realizing he truly had no interest in our child, I felt a clear sense of closure. Thus, our marriage ended unceremoniously after just 2 years. After the divorce, I moved back to my parents' house with my son, Alex. Currently, I'm working as an office worker at a real estate management company nearby, thanks to a referral from my father's acquaintance. According to what my aunt told me, my ex-husband and his affair partner remarried almost immediately after our divorce was finalized. I named our son Alex because in that moment at the hospital, it seemed like the one genuine thing my ex-husband expressed. I hope for a bright future for this child, and even if we never see his father again, I wanted to tell my son that he was loved by his father. A year after the divorce, when I had almost forgotten about him, I received a call from my ex-husband. I hadn't deleted his contact information because of the child support. Sorry to call out of the blue after such a long time. There's something I'd like to talk about. Can we meet? Hearing my ex-husband's voice for the first time in a year, it sounded dark and lifeless, as if he were a different person. Sensing the seriousness of the situation, I agreed to meet him at a cafe near my parents' house after work the next day. Actually, I've been diagnosed with an illness. It's already in a bad state. It's ridiculous that I didn't notice anything wrong with my own body until it got to this point, he said, with a weak smile, leaving me at a loss for words. So I might not be able to provide child support going forward. That's why I want to make our son the beneficiary of my life insurance. I was taken aback by his sudden offer, but I nodded silently to his earnest expression. Leaving a large sum of money to Marissa wouldn't do any good, he muttered under his breath. Driven by curiosity, I couldn't help but ask, "What did you see in her? Was it her looks?" Yeah, that was part of it, but despite appearances, she had her diligent moments. She seemed to understand what men wanted, knew how to reach out where it itched. Though now I realized that was just her way of snagging a man. His response made sense to me. I had never believed he was someone to marry solely based on appearances, but from the way he spoke, it seemed Marissa had outplayed him. Facing death. I've finally had the chance to reflect on my pointless life. The only thing of value I ever did was marrying you and bringing our child into this world in the quiet cafe. Only the sound of him sniffing echoed. I did something terrible to you back then. I'm an idiot for not realizing it until it came to this. I'm truly sorry. This is the only way I can make amends now. I could feel the sincerity in my husband's words. All right, make Alex the beneficiary. He's named Alex. When I nodded, my husband, unconcerned about the onlookers, began to cry out loud. I felt a slight relief knowing that he indeed had a heart. Later we met again to sign and stamp the documents as the legal guardian. While I pitied my husband, I also thought it was divine retribution and felt he deserved it. Even at that moment, half a year later, he informed me that he was going to be hospitalized. A few days after, I decided to take this as a final goodbye and went to visit him with our son. Thinking it might be the last time, my husband was significantly more emaciated than when I last saw him, but he smiled upon seeing Alex. You've grown so much, Alex, thanks to being taken around by his grandparents. Alex, who wasn't shy around strangers, smiled back at my husband. I'm really sorry, such a cute kid. I was truly an idiot, it's my karma," as my husband cried, his face scrunched up. Alex gently patted him, comforting him. If only he had realized what was truly important sooner, my husband might have found happiness watching the two of them. The hatred I had for my husband seemed to disappear. However, as I left the hospital room and was descending to the first floor in the elevator, I encountered the last person I wanted to see. "Hey, why are you here?" Marissa was there, wearing those ribbon-adorned high heels. I remembered the humiliation I felt back then, resurfaced from the depths of my heart. "I was informed, so I came to see my son for the last time." Marissa glared at me and Alex with disdain. "Even though you were dumped, don't you ever come back. If you do, I won't let it go." With those parting words, she boarded the elevator we had just exited and went back up. Although it was infuriating, I understood that it wouldn't feel good for an ex-wife and her child to visit unexpectedly. After that incident, I never went to the hospital again, nor did I intend to see them. But then, 3 months later, Marissa unexpectedly showed up at my parents' house. "Sorry for the sudden visit. My husband passed away. I didn't contact you because I didn't want you at the funeral. But since you came to visit him, I thought I should let you know." "Is that so? My condolences." "Thank you for letting me know." Even though I had braced myself for it, the news of my once-beloved husband's death weighed heavily on me. "From now on, please don't contact me or my in-laws again. I never want to see your face again." "Yes, of course. Oh, just one moment, please." I went inside and put $200 into a condolence envelope from a drawer, then handed it to Marissa. "Please use this for flowers." Marissa's face twisted sourly for a moment, but after receiving the envelope, she bowed slightly and left. I thought this marked the complete end of my relationship with my husband. However, a year later, a call from my former mother-in-law entangled us in an unimaginable situation. The phone rang on a day when I was home alone, enjoying my day off. "Hello, is this Linda? Ken's funeral is about to start. You surely don't plan on not coming, do you?" "Excuse me, what are you talking about? Ken has passed away. You were contacted by Marissa yesterday, weren't you? I'm coming to pick you up, so be ready and wait at the entrance." 3 years had passed since my divorce from my husband. The sudden call from my mother-in-law, with whom I hadn't been in contact, took me by surprise. Moreover, my ex-husband was supposed to have died a year ago. Confused, I nevertheless changed into mourning clothes and prepared to leave. 30 minutes later, the doorbell rang incessantly. "Come on, we're going. It's outrageous not to attend the funeral of a husband who treated you well, even if you're divorced." "That funeral, you mean the first anniversary, right?" My mother-in-law frowned. "What? The funeral is about to start. Why would it be the first anniversary? Why isn't our conversation aligning?" A year ago, Marissa, my ex-husband's current wife, had personally informed me of his death. I had even handed over a condolence envelope with $200 in it. When I mentioned this, my mother-in-law clicked her tongue quietly, and her frown deepened. "Just get in the car. Where's Alex?" "Alex isn't coming. I don't want him to see Marissa." Without saying anything more, my mother-in-law put me in the passenger seat, and we headed straight for the funeral home. Logically, it's strange to invite an ex-wife who has been separated for several years to a funeral. Between my mother-in-law and Marissa, whose story was true, caught in this unbelievable scenario, I was desperate to know the truth. Upon arriving at the funeral home, a monk had just begun the chanting. The funeral hall was small, indicating a service only for close family members. My husband's portrait was displayed on the altar. It indeed appeared to be my husband's funeral today. Feeling as if I'd been caught in an absurd twist, I couldn't help but let out a rueful smile. The funeral proceeded without issue. And as we waited for the departure of the hearse, Marissa approached me aggressively. "Hey, why are you here? Didn't I tell you never to show your face again? Why are you attending without being invited?" As always, Marissa's way of speaking was infuriating. "I was the one who called her. Didn't I tell you that I would contact Linda? What use is your head?" "I didn't want her here at the funeral," my mother-in-law sighed deeply, frowning. "You lied about Ken dying a year ago and even accepted condolence money from Linda. Is there another reason you were so adamant about her not coming?" Marissa's face tensed for a moment, and I could hear her swallow hard. "Linda, I invited you today because I thought you deserved to say thank you and farewell to Ken, considering how well he treated you. You were taken care of, so it seemed right to express gratitude and see him off." I tilted my head, confused by what my mother-in-law was saying. Despite receiving child support every month, didn't she always demand more? It was clear that Marissa was beginning to panic. Even though it wasn't hot, she was sweating profusely on her forehead. Yes, that's right. Since she was getting child support from him every month, she should pay her respects properly. "But look, the funeral is over now, so you can go home. We'll say our goodbyes with just the family. Now come on, it's time for you to leave." Marissa, while making insistent gestures, tried to hurry me out by pushing on my back. Her actions were so unnatural that I started to understand the meaning behind my mother-in-law's frowns and questioning. She must have been suspecting Marissa all along. I shrugged off Marissa's hand and turned squarely to face my mother-in-law. "What additional child support? I haven't received anything beyond the agreed amount. I haven't been in contact with him for a long time." My mother-in-law's expression turned thunderous in an instant. "So you've been deceiving us all along. You complained about Linda's demands being too high, so I've been sending you $1,000 every month, and you've been pocketing all of it. I never imagined Marissa was exploiting me to extort money from my in-laws." Cornered by my mother-in-law and me, Marissa, realizing she couldn't make excuses, defiantly started to lash out. "It's not my fault. He earned a lot, but never let me spend freely. And it seems he had other women until he fell ill. I'm the one who was deceived. My husband did have a good salary from his job at a large corporation, but even when we were married, he only gave me a fixed monthly allowance. I never struggled financially, but his infidelity was undeniable. You could have lived comfortably without your extravagance, couldn't you? Ken said you were a useless money pit. Apparently you hardly did any housework and spent your time gallivanting around. Ah, enough. Be quiet. It's his fault for not letting me have freedom. It's only natural for you in-laws to support me when your daughter-in-law is struggling." Finally, Marissa's true feelings came out. "His inheritance rightfully belongs to me, his wife. Now I can finally have my freedom, so don't just invite his ex-wife as you please." The reason Marissa didn't want me at the funeral was all about the inheritance. For Marissa, the idea of my son, my husband's legitimate child, receiving any inheritance was something she desperately wanted to avoid. The relatives waiting for the departure of the hearse were frowning and whispering among themselves. Hearing the commotion, my father-in-law came over and apologized to me. "I'm sorry you got dragged into this mess. I'll get in touch on another day, so it's okay for you to head home now. Thank you for coming." Turning my back on the still arguing mother-in-law and Marissa, I left without waiting for the hearse to depart, feeling entangled in an unfortunate situation. I hoped this would be the end, but I couldn't shake off a bad feeling. Unfortunately, my intuition would prove correct in the coming months. Nearly 3 months later, something unthinkable happened. It was a holiday, and we had gone to a large park with a packed lunch. The park, essentially a vast forest, was bustling with families and couples. Alex, now 3 years old, was energetically tireless, with my parents and me taking turns keeping up with his play. While my dad and I were lying on the leisure sheet, my mom, who had gone with Alex to the playground, came back panicked. "Alex is missing. Hurry up." Alarmed by her frantic demeanor, we all rushed over, but couldn't find Alex around the slide where he had been playing. He slid down once and went back up to slide again, so I waited below, but he never came back down. The large athletic-style slide was crowded with children that day, with kids disappearing inside momentarily. Instead of focusing on the slide, I expanded my view and scanned the surroundings again. Then I spotted Alex's yellow hat as he was walking along a path beyond the playground. It appeared he was being led by a woman I didn't recognize. "Alex!" Hearing my shout, Alex stopped and looked back, and at that moment the woman holding his hand started to run with him in her arms. "Wait!" Before I could start running, my father, who jogs as a hobby, had already sprinted ahead. My heart raced with fear, making it hard to run as I wanted. I called out to my father ahead, "Dad, they're heading towards the parking lot." My father increased his speed and shouted for help. "Someone, please stop that woman. She's kidnapping a child." The woman reached her car, trying to throw Alex into the passenger seat and get into the driver's seat herself, but she was unable to. Several young dads, responding to my father's cries, managed to grab the woman just as she was about to get into the car. "Alex!" After my father took the sobbing Alex out of the passenger seat, he handed him over to me, who had arrived shortly after, relieved. I collapsed to the ground, hugging Alex tightly. "Don't interfere. Because of that kid, I don't get any money. If only he wasn't there. If only he would disappear." The woman was Marissa. Her eyes were bloodshot, and the way she screamed, spitting and raging, was clearly deranged. Trembling, I couldn't say anything back, just watched as the out-of-control Marissa was taken away by the arriving police car. Later, my father-in-law contacted me to apologize and discuss the receipt of my ex-husband's life insurance. It seemed my in-laws had been informed by my husband to proceed in this manner, but they had kept it a secret from Marissa until discussions about the inheritance could be held. Apart from the life insurance, Marissa was to inherit everything else, but it turned out there wasn't much of an estate left. The substantial alimony paid out for our divorcee 3 years prior and the expenses for his illness had left little money. However, there wasn't just one insurance policy, and Marissa must have received a significant sum, at least in the hundreds of thousands. Marissa had been splurging on young hosts. You see, she's always been reckless with money, and it seems she had a considerable amount of debt. She likely used the inheritance to pay off her debts, but it's unclear if she managed to settle them all. My father-in-law sighed deeply, sounding exasperated. More than anything, she couldn't stand knowing the amount of insurance money left for Alex. The insurance money my husband left to Alex was $400,000. It seems Marissa naively believed that if the beneficiary, Alex, were to pass away, the insurance money would automatically go to her. Items such as adhesive tape, rope, and a knife were found in Marissa's car, and during police interrogation, she reportedly confessed to planning to kidnap and kill Alex. Recalling Marissa's deranged look at that moment sends shivers down my spine even now. Perhaps their overbearing love swung from excessive interference to non-interference. We interfered too much in Ken's life out of love. It seems our relationship worsened around the time he went to college, so we learned to keep our opinions to ourselves and respect the decisions of our adult son, they said. But we should have been there for Alex. We should have supported you more. I'm truly sorry. Finally, my mother-in-law added. Alex was the name of Ken's childhood friend from a family that respected his own decisions, unlike ours. He's fulfilling his childhood dream of being a pilot now. She dabbed her nose with a handkerchief. So I think Ken wanted Alex to have a life like his friends. Thank you for keeping the name my son suggested for our grandson. There's no doubt that the moment my husband first held our child, he wished for a happy future for him. Just knowing that was more than enough for me. While I can't forgive what my husband did, I no longer harbor any hatred towards him. Considering the future, our family has decided to move to my mother's hometown, which is a plane ride away. It seems Marissa won't be getting out from behind bars anytime soon, but truly, I never want to see her face again. We were dragged into an unbelievable situation, but it brought some clarity. Someday I want to tell Alex, your dad truly wished for your happiness. Moving forward, our family of 4 intends to live happily, respecting each other's decisions.
Evelyn, what gave you the nerve to walk out on Jack? Have you forgotten your duties as his wife? You're going to regret this, mark my words. Linda's voice pierced through the small, cluttered living room like a dagger. Her eyes bored into me, seething with barely contained anger. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Linda, I have my reasons for leaving, I said calmly, though my heart pounded in my chest. Linda scoffed, crossing her arms. Reasons? What reasons could possibly justify abandoning your husband? It all flashed before my eyes. The years of watching Jack's calm demeanor turn into cold indifference. The strain of the recession stealing his job, and with it, our peace. Our 6-year marriage had started with promise, his dreams aligning with mine like 2 perfect puzzle pieces. But life, it seemed, had other plans. Jack hadn't taken well to job hunting. Weeks turned into months, his frustration mounting as every application went unanswered. Meanwhile, my own modest income from graphic design barely kept us afloat. Jack hasn't found a job in months, Linda. We've been struggling to survive. It's not about abandonment. It's about survival, I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. Struggling? Linda's eyebrows shot up. Is that what you call it when my son desperately searches for work while you prance around in front of a computer all day? A swell of anger rose in me. I work long hours to pay the bills. Jack isn't the only one affected here. He's a man, Evelyn. He has pride. He can't just take any job. Do you know how that would look? What people would say? She challenged. That's the problem, Linda, I said through gritted teeth. He's letting his pride come before our needs. Just then the front door creaked open. Jack stepped inside, looking gaunt and haggard. His eyes widened when he saw our confrontation. What's going on here? He asked, his voice tired. I turned to face him. We were just discussing why I left, I said, squaring my shoulders. Jack, we need to find a solution that works for both of us. This can't go on. Jack's face tightened. We're fine. I'll find something soon. You just need to be patient. Patient? I echoed, my voice rising. I've been patient. All I'm asking is that we make changes before we lose everything. A heavy silence fell over the room. Linda glared at me with venomous eyes, but it was Jack's look of helplessness that cut the deepest. He sank into the worn-out armchair, head in his hands. I'm trying, Evelyn. I really am. We need to move to a more affordable place, I said, reaching for his hand. It doesn't make sense to stay here when we can barely keep up. No, Jack said forcefully, pulling away. We are not moving. I refuse to give my mother something else to criticize. And that's what this is about. I shot back, the frustration boiling over. Your pride and your mother's judgment are more important than our stability. Linda's face turned red with fury. How dare you speak to him like that? After everything he's been through? We've all been through enough, I said, my voice breaking. Jack, you need to listen to me. If we don't change something, we're going to fall apart. Jack looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of anger and sadness. Maybe you're the one who's falling apart, Evelyn. I stood there, stunned. His words cut deeper than I'd expected. I turned away, biting back the tears. I need to go, I whispered, grabbing my coat. Running away again? Linda taunted, but I didn't look back. Evelyn, wait, Jack called, but I was already out the door, the cold air hitting me hard. As I walked away from the house, from Jack and Linda, one thought kept spinning in my mind. I had my reasons, and I knew, deep down, I needed to stand by them. I sat in my car, the engine humming softly as I stared at the road ahead. Moving to a cheaper apartment was a bitter pill, but it was the only way forward. When I walked in the door, Jack was sitting on the couch, flipping through channels, eyes glazed over. "We need to talk," I said, setting my bag down. He barely glanced up. "About what?" "I found a more affordable apartment. It's in a nice area and we could save a lot," I explained, hoping he'd understand. Jack's expression turned stony. "We're not moving. I'm not dragging my reputation through the mud just to save a few bucks." "It's not about that," I sighed. "It's about making sure we can survive this." His jaw clenched. "You don't get it, do you? My mother will never let us hear the end of it." "At least think about it," I pleaded. "We're drowning here." Just then, the door flew open, and Linda stormed in, her eyes blazing. "What's this I hear about moving?" Jack shot me a warning look, but I couldn't hold back anymore. "We need to find somewhere affordable, Linda. We're just managing to scrape by." "Jack told me you're pushing for this ridiculous idea." Linda's voice was sharp. "You just want to make my son look like a failure." "That's not true," I retorted, feeling the anger rise again. "I'm trying to help." "Help?" she scoffed. "By belittling him? He's a man. He needs to look after his family." "I am looking after my family," Jack muttered, looking defeated. "Really?" I shot back. "By turning down jobs because they're beneath you? We can't afford to be picky right now." Linda stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "My son deserves better than to be degraded by some insignificant job. You're the one who needs to step up." I shook my head. "This isn't about ego. This is about keeping a roof over our heads." "How dare you?" Linda hissed. "You've always wanted to undermine Jack." I felt an icy fury build inside me. "This isn't about you, Linda. This is about us. And if you're not going to be supportive, stay out of it." "Supportive?" She laughed bitterly. "You couldn't handle your responsibilities, and now you want to run away." "Enough," Jack shouted, standing up. "Both of you, enough." He turned to me, eyes pleading. "Stop making this harder." I looked at him, frustration gnawing at me. "Don't you see? We need a change." Jack turned away, shaking his head. "I can't do this," he muttered. I grabbed my bag and moved to the door. "If you change your mind, let me know. But I can't keep living like this." Linda's sneer followed me out. "Go on. Leave. See if the world cares about your pity party." As the door slammed behind me, the weight of it all hit me. I was fighting a losing battle. Jack's pride and Linda's venomous grip were stronger than our love, but I couldn't let that destroy me. I had to fight for my own sanity, even if it meant stepping away. The cold air outside felt liberating compared to the suffocating atmosphere inside the house. I walked down the street, my mind racing. I needed a plan, a new start. Linda's words echoed in my head, but I shook them off. It wasn't pity I needed, it was resolve. I spent the night with my thoughts, figuring out steps to take, starting with visiting a more affordable place. The road ahead seemed daunting, but it was a journey I had to make. Jack's refusal to see reason and Linda's relentless criticism showed me I had to look out for myself. It was time to reclaim my life. I walked into the apartment that Jack and I had shared for 6 years, feeling the suffocating weight of our unresolved issues. The living room, once full of warmth, now felt cold and uninviting. Boxes were scattered everywhere, remnants of my attempt to create some semblance of order in our chaotic life. Jack was at the table, our usual dinner routine, disrupted by the silence that followed my recent suggestions. Tonight I had managed to make a simple meal, pasta and salad. It wasn't much, but it was all I had time for after working a full day. "Is this it?" Jack asked, poking at his food with a fork. There was annoyance in his voice. "It's all I could manage," I replied, tiredly sinking into the chair opposite him. "This is what it's come to?" he continued, not meeting my eyes. "We're seriously living off scraps now?" "I'm sorry, Jack," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "There's only so much I can do. I've been working long hours, handling everything here. We need to cut back." He slammed his fork down, startling me. "You think I'm just sitting here enjoying this? You think this is what I wanted?" I took a deep breath, feeling the tension rise. "No, I don't. But you're not helping by refusing to make changes. We have to be realistic." "Realistic?" he scoffed. "You're the one who's given up. You've been distant, always criticizing." "I'm not criticizing," I said, struggling to keep my frustration in check. "I'm trying to find solutions. We can't go on like this." "And what about you?" he shot back. "You think you're perfect? You neglect everything else just to keep that job." I'm neglecting? The accusation stung. I'm the one keeping us afloat. He pushed his chair back violently, causing it to topple over. Enough. I don't need your lectures. Suddenly, the door opened, and Linda walked in, her eyes scanning the scene. What's going on now? She demanded, sensing the tension. Jack turned to her, gesturing toward the table. This is what we've been reduced to, Mom. Barely any food, constant arguments. Linda's eyes narrowed as she looked at me. This is unacceptable, Evelyn. You can't even manage a decent meal? Linda, I'm doing my best, I snapped, losing my patience. Working long hours doesn't leave much time for anything else. Your best? She sneered. Your best is what drove Jack to this point. Maybe if you took care of your responsibilities instead of running off to work, we wouldn't be in this mess. That's completely unfair, Linda, I said, my voice trembling. I've been handling everything while Jack... While Jack what? Linda interrupted. While Jack suffers because of your failures? Jack, looking defeated, sank back into his chair. He didn't defend me, didn't say a word. I need help, I almost whispered, looking at Jack. I can't do this alone. We don't need your pity, Linda spat. You will take care of this household properly, job or not. It's time you remembered your place as Jack's wife. Her words struck hard, leaving me feeling more alone than ever. I won't sacrifice everything just to live up to your expectations, Linda, I said, standing up. You'll do what's necessary, she replied, eyes cold and unrelenting. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I fought them back. This isn't about you, I said, turning to leave. I've had enough. As I walked out, the finality of my decision hit me. This relentless cycle had to end. The house felt more like a battleground than a home, and I couldn't keep fighting a war where I was the only one seeking peace. I needed to reclaim my strength, even if it meant walking away from everything I once knew. The sun was setting as I pulled into the driveway of my parents' house. The familiar sight brought a wave of mixed emotions, relief, guilt, and a trace of hope. As I stepped out of the car, the front door opened, and my mom, Susan, came rushing out. Evelyn, honey, she called, wrapping her arms around me in a warm hug. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks, Mom, I murmured, holding on tight. I didn't know where else to go. Come inside, she said softly, guiding me into the house. My dad, Tom, was sitting in the living room, his face lighting up when he saw me. Hey, kiddo, he greeted, standing up to give me a hug. Rough day, huh? You could say that, I replied, trying to smile. The warmth of my parents' home was comforting. It felt like a sanctuary after the chaos of my life with Jack and Linda. We sat down at the kitchen table, and my mom poured me a cup of tea. So what happened? She asked gently. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past few months. Jack and I have been struggling. He lost his job and refuses to find something new. I'm the only one working, and it's not enough. His mom keeps interfering, making everything worse. Tom nodded thoughtfully. Linda's always been difficult, but it sounds like things have gotten out of hand. They have, Dad. I suggested moving to a more affordable place, but Jack refuses. He's worried about what Linda will think, I said, feeling the frustration bubble up again. Susan's face tightened. And what did Linda say? She accused me of failing Jack. She wants me to quit my job and stay home, take care of everything, I admitted, feeling the anger rise. I can't do that. I shouldn't have to. Of course not, my dad said firmly. You've worked hard to build your career. There's nothing wrong with wanting to keep it. I just don't know what to do, I sighed. I love Jack, but he's changed, and Linda, she's toxic. Susan reached over and took my hand. You did the right thing by leaving, at least for now. You need space to figure things out. I can't keep living like this, I confessed, tears welling up in my eyes. I'm exhausted, and I feel like I'm losing myself. You need to take care of yourself first, Tom said. It's obvious Jack isn't seeing things clearly. Maybe time apart will make him realize what's important. Here, Susan said, sliding a box of tissues toward me. Stay here for as long as you need to. We'll help you figure this out. After talking with my parents, I felt a small glimmer of hope. Maybe there was a way out of this mess. That night, I finally slept peacefully for the first time in months, feeling the comfort of being in a place where I was truly supported. Over the next few days, Jack called incessantly. The voicemails piled up, desperate, angry, pleading, but I didn't answer. I needed time to think, to heal. When I finally listened to one, his voice was strained. Evelyn, please come back. I can't do this without you. The house is falling apart. It was the confirmation I needed. He wasn't dealing with the reality of our situation. He was still relying on me to fix it all. One evening, my parents and I discussed my next steps. Have you considered your options? Tom asked, his voice gentle. I'm thinking about it, I confessed. But right now, I just need to find my footing. And you will, Susan assured me. Take the time you need. We're here for you, no matter what. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I had control over my life again. Walking away wasn't an end. It was a chance for a new beginning. The resolve to find clarity and strength grew each day, bolstered by the unwavering support of my family. I approached the house cautiously, the place that once felt like home now tinged with apprehension. There was an eerie stillness as I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The living room was surprisingly clean, almost too clean, as if no one had been living there. I called out, "Jack, are you here?" Silence. The air felt thick with expectation. I walked further in, noticing how empty it felt. The usual clutter was gone, the coziness replaced by a stark emptiness that sent a chill down my spine. I dialed Jack's number, the ringing echoing ominously. He picked up on the third ring. "Evelyn," his voice sounded strained. "Are you back?" "I'm at the house. Where are you?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "I'm at Mom's," he admitted hesitantly. "I moved out, decided it was best, for now." I took a deep breath, trying to process the information. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I thought you wouldn't care," he said, almost defensively. "You left me." "I left because we needed a change," I replied, feeling the familiar frustration rise. "Moving to your mom's doesn't solve anything." There was a pause before he spoke again. "I'm trying, Evelyn. I didn't know what else to do." "This isn't the way to handle things," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Running back to Linda isn't the answer." There was silence on the line. I could almost picture him, sitting in Linda's pristine living room, the judgmental eyes of his mother piercing through him. "Jack, we need to talk face to face," I said firmly. "This isn't something we can solve over the phone." He hesitated. "Mom doesn't think it's a good idea." Anger flared up inside me. "Your mother doesn't get to decide what we do. We're adults. We make our own choices." "Evelyn, please," he started, but I cut him off. "I'm coming over," I said, my voice firm. "We're talking. End of discussion." I hung up before he could argue further and grabbed my keys. The drive to Linda's house was a blur of emotions, anger, frustration, a glimmer of hope that maybe this conversation could bring some clarity. I pulled up to Linda's grandiose house and braced myself. The door opened before I could knock, and there she stood, arms crossed, the disdain in her eyes burning. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. "I need to talk to Jack," I said evenly. "You have nothing to discuss," she snapped. "You left him, remember?" "Jack is my husband," I replied, refusing to back down. "We need to talk." She was about to argue when Jack appeared behind her, looking tired and worn. "Let her in, Mom," he said quietly. Linda glared at me but stepped aside. I walked into their immaculate living room, feeling the weight of judgment in the air. Jack motioned for me to sit, but I stayed standing, needing the sense of control. "Jack, this isn't working," I began. "Moving back here isn't fixing anything. We need to figure out what we're going to do." "I know," he said, looking down, "but I can't face it on my own. And you won't have to," I assured him. "But we need to make decisions together without outside interference." Linda suddenly stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Outside interference? Is that what you call a mother's concern?" "This is between Jack and me, Linda," I said firmly. "You need to let us handle our own lives." Jack looked torn, glancing between us. "Evelyn, can we just try to work this out? Maybe if we move back here temporarily?" I shook my head. "That's not a solution. We need our own space, a fresh start." Linda scoffed. "And where will that leave Jack? Struggling while you avoid your duties?" "No," I replied, my voice cold. "It leaves Jack and me finding a way forward that's best for both of us without being controlled by you." Jack sighed, looking defeated. "I don't know what to do, Evelyn." I softened, stepping closer. "We start by talking, communicating, not running away to our parents." He nodded slowly, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. Linda opened her mouth to speak, but Jack held up a hand. "Mom, I need to figure this out with Evelyn." Her eyes blazed with anger, but she said nothing. I took Jack's hand, feeling a small surge of hope. We had a long way to go, but maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back. Linda and Jack were waiting as I arrived at the lawyer's office. Linda's glare could melt steel, but I held my ground. Jack sat next to her, looking defeated. The air was thick with tension, each second dragging like an eternity. The lawyer, a stern woman named Miss Harding, greeted us. "Let's get started," she said, guiding us into the conference room. We took our seats, and she began going over the paperwork. Linda couldn't keep quiet for long. "Evelyn, this is insanity. You're throwing away your marriage over some petty arguments." "Petty?" I shot back. "Do you have any idea what we've been through?" "Jack's been a good husband," Linda said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "He deserves better than this." Jack squirmed in his seat but said nothing. I took a deep breath and looked straight at him. "Jack, we both know things haven't been right for a long time." He nodded slightly, not meeting my eyes. Miss Harding interjected, "Let's focus on the documents. Evelyn, you've made your intentions clear. Jack, do you have any objections?" Linda jumped in before Jack could answer. "Of course he objects. He's devastated." "Let him speak, Linda," I said firmly, my eyes locked on Jack. Jack finally looked up. "I don't want this," he said quietly, "but I can't keep living like this either." Linda's face turned red with anger. "You're really going to let her walk away? After everything?" "Linda, it's our decision," I said. "Your meddling has done enough damage." "How dare you?" she hissed, standing up. "I've only ever tried to help." "Help?" I laughed bitterly. "You've undermined every effort I've made to keep this marriage together. Your interference has driven us apart." Jack's eyes widened, the truth of my words sinking in. "Mom, Evelyn has a point. We need to sort this out ourselves." Linda looked like she'd been slapped. "You're choosing her over me?" "No one is choosing sides," Jack said, his voice shaking. "But we need to handle this, not you." Miss Harding cleared her throat, bringing us back to the matter at hand. "If we could return to the paperwork," I nodded, trying to focus on the tangible steps we were taking. As we worked through the details, Linda sat fuming, her eyes burning holes into me. The room felt like a pressure cooker, the tension building to a breaking point. Finally, Miss Harding handed over the last page. "Evelyn, if you can sign here." I took the pen, my hand trembling slightly, and signed. Then she handed it to Jack. He hesitated, looking at me one last time. "Are you sure this is what you want?" "I'm sure," I said softly. "We need to move on." He signed, and the papers were complete. Miss Harding gathered them up. "That concludes our session. You'll receive copies in the mail." As we stood to leave, Linda could hold back no longer. "Mark my words, Evelyn. You'll regret this. You're throwing away the best thing that ever happened to you." I met her gaze, unwavering. "I'm doing what's best for both of us. You can't control us anymore." Jack looked at me, a mix of sadness and relief in his eyes. "Take care." "Evelyn." "You too, Jack," I replied, turning to leave. As I walked out of the office, the weight of the past years seemed to lift off my shoulders. For the first time in a long while, I felt free. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was mine to navigate, no longer shackled by the toxic influences that had nearly consumed me. I was ready to reclaim my life and build a future on my own terms. I glanced around the empty apartment, feeling a strange sense of finality. The last of my possessions were packed, ready to be moved to my new place. I let out a deep breath, savoring the silence. It was a stark contrast to the chaos that had defined my life for so long. Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from Linda. "Whatever you think you've won, remember you'll never escape the shame of your failure." I shook my head and dialed Rachel, my longtime friend. She picked up after the first ring. "Hey, need help with the move?" "More like moral support," I said, a hint of a smile playing on my lips. "I'll be right over," she replied, and I hung up, feeling a little lighter already. Rachel arrived soon after, her presence a comforting reminder of the support I had outside the toxic relationships I'd left behind. "Ready to start fresh?" she asked, giving me a hug. "More than ready," I said. "Let's get this show on the road." We loaded the boxes into her car, working quickly and efficiently. As we finished, I took one last look around the apartment. "Good riddance," I muttered under my breath. Rachel smirked. "Onward and upward, Evelyn." When we arrived at my new place, I felt an overwhelming sense of liberation. The apartment was small but cozy, the perfect blank slate for building my new life. We spent the afternoon unpacking, laughter and conversation filling the empty spaces as the new chapter of my life began to take shape. Then, Unexpectedly, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from Jack. I hesitated but answered. Hello? Evelyn, I just wanted to check in, he said, sounding unsure. I heard you moved out. I did, I replied, keeping my voice steady. It's time for a new start. He sighed, the weight of regret evident. I'm sorry for everything. I should have listened more, fought harder for us. It's too late now, Jack, I said gently. We both have to move on. I know, he said quietly. Take care, Evelyn. You too, I replied, ending the call. Rachel looked at me questioningly. Everything okay? Yeah, I said, pocketing my phone. Just part of closing the chapter. The sun started to set, casting a warm glow over the apartment. We shared a simple meal on the floor, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes but filled with a sense of hope and possibility. Just then, there was a loud, furious knock at the door. My heart rate spiked. Rachel went to open it, and there stood Linda, her eyes flashing with anger. Thought you could just run away? No, Linda, I said, stepping forward, feeling Rachel's reassuring presence beside me. I'm moving on with my life. You can't control me anymore. You ungrateful, she started, but I cut her off. This is my home now. You're not welcome here, I said firmly, standing my ground. You'll regret this, she spat, but the words held less power now. Jack will never recover from what you've done. Jack and I will both find our own ways forward, I said, closing the door. Goodbye, Linda. Rachel locked it firmly behind her and then turned to me. Well, she's a piece of work. I laughed, feeling lighter. That's the last time she sets foot in my life. We finished unpacking, each box emptied, symbolizing a step towards reclaiming my independence. By the end of the night, the apartment felt more like a home. It wasn't just about moving to a new place. It was about reclaiming my life and my identity. As Rachel left, I stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. My phone buzzed one last time, but this time it was a message from a potential job opportunity. Things were finally looking up. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but it was mine to travel, and that made all the difference. With a sense of resolve, I closed the curtains and turned off the lights, looking forward to a new dawn in the morning. Morning light filtered through the curtains of my new apartment, a fresh start greeting me. I felt a sense of calm and readiness for the day ahead, my steps lighter as I moved through the cozy space. The chaos and suffocation of the past felt like a distant memory. As I sipped my coffee, enjoying the peace, my phone lit up with an unexpected call. It was Linda. I rolled my eyes but answered, curiosity getting the better of me. What do you want, Linda? We need to talk, she said, her voice unusually strained. About what? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. It's about Jack. He's not doing well, she admitted, her usual venom replaced by something that almost sounded like worry. I felt a pang of concern despite everything. What's going on? He's struggling to cope. He's lost without you, Linda said, her voice wavering. Please, Evelyn, can you just talk to him? I took a deep breath, considering my response. Linda, I've moved on. Jack needs to figure out his own life without me. You can't just abandon him after everything, she pleaded, a touch of desperation creeping in. I didn't abandon him. I left because it was the healthy choice for both of us. I said firmly, and frankly, he needs to stand on his own 2 feet. There was silence on the other end before she spoke again, a hard edge back in her voice. Fine, but don't think this is over, Evelyn. You'll see the consequences of your actions. I hung up, frustration bubbling up inside me, but I quickly let it go, refocusing on the day ahead. I had plans to explore the neighborhood, maybe find a coffee shop to work from. My new job opportunity was promising, and I wanted to embrace this fresh start fully. The day passed beautifully. I found a quaint little cafe just a few blocks away and spent hours there, immersing myself in new projects. My passion for graphic design felt reignited, the creativity and freedom flowing back to me. It was a reminder of what I'd fought for and won. Returning home in the evening, I felt a sense of accomplishment and peace. I was settling into this new chapter of my life, one where I called the shots. I cooked myself dinner, a simple but satisfying meal, and sat at my tiny kitchen table feeling content. Just as I was finishing up, my phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. I answered with a hesitant, "Hello?" "Evelyn, it's Jack," his voice came through, sounding defeated. "Can we talk?" I hesitated but agreed. "Okay, Jack, what's on your mind?" "I'm sorry for everything," he started. I realize now how much I relied on you, and it wasn't fair. I should have listened more, been more supportive. Jack, I appreciate the apology, I said gently, but we've made our decisions. We need to stick to them. I know, I just needed to say it, he replied, a note of finality in his voice. Take care, Evelyn. You too, Jack, I said, ending the call and feeling a sense of closure. Just as I was about to relax for the night, there was a knock at my door. Surprised, I opened it to find Linda standing there, looking more haggard than I'd ever seen her. Linda, what are you doing here? I asked tiredly. Please, Evelyn, I'm desperate, she started, her voice cracking. Jack's in a bad place. I don't know what to do. You were always the strong one, the one who held things together. I sighed, feeling a tug of pity despite everything. Linda, I can't fix this for you. Jack needs to learn to cope on his own. Her shoulders sagged in defeat. I just don't know how to help him. I think the best thing you can do is support him without trying to control everything, I suggested. He needs space to find his way. Linda nodded slowly, a rare moment of vulnerability in her eyes. Maybe you're right. Take care, Linda, I said, gently closing the door. As I leaned back against it, the apartment around me felt more like home than ever. The future was mine, filled with endless possibilities, free from the chains that had once bound me. And for the first time in a long while, I felt a profound sense of peace and hope. You can't be serious, Trevor. Who is she? I demanded, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. Trevor didn't flinch. I'm dead serious. This is Jasmine. We're moving in together, and I want a divorce, he declared, his eyes cold and unfeeling. The woman standing next to him, with her perfectly manicured nails and smug expression, chimed in, Pack your bags, Monica. Your time's up. I felt the ground shift beneath me. My eyes darted between Trevor and Jasmine, searching for some hint of a joke, a misunderstanding, anything, but their unwavering expressions confirmed the awful truth. After 25 years, this is how you do it, I whispered, barely able to form the words. Trevor shrugged. It's time for a change. I'm tired of the same routine. Jasmine makes me feel alive. And what about your children? What about our life? I pleaded, hoping to stir some emotion in him. They're adults now. They'll understand, he stated callously. Jasmine smirked, her eyes flicking over me dismissively. You should have seen it coming, Monica. Men get bored. They want excitement. How dare you? I spat, every ounce of my being quaking with rage. Trevor stepped closer, his face inches from mine. Don't make a scene, just leave. My knuckles whitened as I clenched them, a flood of memories flashing through my mind, our wedding day, the birth of Erica and Danny, years spent building a life together. I squared my shoulders, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. You don't get to decide that, I said quietly but firmly. As I walked away from them, I could hear Jasmine's voice dripping with smugness. We'll start moving things in tomorrow. Make sure you're out by then. I stumbled up the stairs, my heart aching. In our bedroom, I sank onto the bed, head in my hands. I heard Trevor's footsteps behind me. You can't just leave us like this, I said without turning around. Watch me. He replied, his voice void of any emotion. Tears streamed down my face as I tried to process what had just happened. How could everything change so fast? The door creaked open, and Jasmine strutted in, scanning the room as if it was already hers. I hope you don't mind if I take a look around. I stood up abruptly. Get out, I demanded, my voice shaking. She tilted her head slightly. Suit yourself. You'll be gone soon anyway. They left, leaving a suffocating silence in their wake. I looked around the room, at the life we had built, now hanging in the balance. The wedding photo on the nightstand, the drawings Erica and Danny had made as kids, everything felt like a cruel joke. I had to figure out my next move. I needed help, but who would understand? As I grabbed my cell phone, I dialed Lisa's number, my best friend since high school. Her familiar voice answered, Hey, Monica, long time no hear. Lisa, it's Trevor. He's leaving me, I managed to say through tears. There was a pause then. What? Tell me everything. I took a deep breath and began to recount the events. With each word, I felt a small measure of relief. I don't know what to do, Lisa. He brought her to our home, told me to leave. Stay right where you are. I'm coming over, she said, her voice filled with determination. As I hung up, I felt a flicker of hope. I wasn't alone. I could survive this betrayal. I had to. For Erica and Danny, for myself. I heard the garage door open and close at odd hours, signaling Trevor's comings and goings. Most nights he didn't come home at all. When he did, it was usually with Jasmine. She treated our home like it was hers, strutting around with a possessive air that made my blood boil. Today was no different. I was in the kitchen when they walked in, laughing about something trivial. Trevor barely glanced at me as he passed by, heading straight into the living room. "Don't you have something better to do?" Jasmine sneered, eyeing the grocery bag in my hand. I didn't respond, focusing on unloading the groceries, anything to keep my hands busy and my mind off the venomous words that burned inside me. She strolled over to the dining table, deliberately knocking over a vase of fresh flowers. Petals scattered across the table, a once beautiful arrangement, now a mess. "Oops, how clumsy of me," she said with a fake gasp. I clenched my jaw. "Why do you keep coming here, Jasmine? You have your own place." She smirked, tilting her head. "Because I can. Trevor likes having me around. Don't you, sweetheart?" She called out to Trevor, who was mindlessly flipping through TV channels. "Yeah, sure," Trevor responded without enthusiasm, his eyes glued to the screen. In that moment, the phone rang, startling all of us. I picked it up, recognizing Erica's voice immediately. "Hey, Mom, Danny and I are coming home this weekend. We thought it'd be nice to spend some time together. Is that okay?" "Of course, sweetie. I can't wait to see you both," I said, forcing a smile into my voice. "See you soon." "Love you," she said cheerfully before hanging up. I turned back to see Jasmine leaning against the counter, arms crossed. "Looks like the kids are coming over. Should we tell them the news, or do you want the honors?" "They're coming to see their mother, not you," I snapped. Trevor finally tore his eyes from the TV. "They should know. Sooner or later, they'll find out," he said dismissively. "Not now," I insisted, my voice trembling. "We'll talk when they're here." Jasmine rolled her eyes. "Fine. Just make sure you're ready for that conversation." The weekend arrived quickly. Erica and Danny burst through the front door, filling the house with the laughter and liveliness it had been missing. I hugged them both tightly, savoring every moment. "Mom, is everything okay? You seem off," Erica observed, her brow furrowed in concern. Danny nodded, glancing towards the living room where Trevor and Jasmine were sitting. "Yeah, what's going on?" he asked. Taking a deep breath, I led them to the kitchen, away from prying eyes. "There's something you need to know," I began, struggling to find the right words. "Your father and we're getting a divorce. He's been seeing someone else." Erica's eyes widened in shock, while Danny clenched his fists. "Are you serious? Dad, how could you?" Erica shouted as she stormed into the living room. Trevor looked up at her, unbothered. "It's complicated. We're just going in different directions." Danny followed, his voice trembling with rage. "Complicated? You're destroying our family." Jasmine stood up, looking between all of us. "Trevor needs someone who can keep up with him. Monica couldn't handle it. Simple as that." The room fell into a tense silence as Erica turned to me, her eyes filled with empathy and anger. "Mom, we'll help you through this. You don't deserve any of this," she said softly. Danny nodded. "We'll make sure you're okay. You're not alone." In that moment, I felt a surge of strength. Their love and support gave me hope. This was just the beginning, but already I felt a resolve solidifying within me. With Erica and Danny by my side, I could face whatever lay ahead. Sunday morning, the weight of last night's conversation hung heavily in the air. Erica and Danny were unusually quiet during breakfast. Trevor and Jasmine, predictably, were nowhere to be found. As we cleared the plates, Erica turned to me, her eyes filled with concern. "Mom, you should really think about the divorce. Get ahead of this," she urged, her voice steady. "I know, sweetheart, but it's all so overwhelming," I replied, wiping my hands on a dish towel. Danny joined in, his tone filled with determination. "We're with you, Mom. You don't have to face this alone." Just then, the front door opened and Trevor walked in, followed by Jasmine. They were laughing, oblivious to the emotional wreckage they had left behind. "Morning, everyone," Trevor announced, attempting a cheerful tone. Erica's eyes narrowed. "Dad, how can you act like nothing happened?" Jasmine smirked, slinging her arm through Trevor's. "We just had a great breakfast." "What's the problem, Erica?" "The problem, Jasmine," Danny shot back, "is that you have no respect for our mom or our family. You waltz in here like you own the place." Trevor raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "Calm down, Danny. There's no need for this hostility. Let's just enjoy the weekend. Erica shook her head in disbelief. Enjoy the weekend? After everything you've done? This isn't just your life, Dad. You've torn our family apart. Trevor sighed, looking genuinely puzzled. I didn't mean for it to be like this. Life just got complicated. Complicated? That's your excuse? Erica retorted, her voice rising. Jasmine stepped forward, her eyes cold. Look, maybe it's best if Monica just leaves now. It'll make it easier for everyone. I felt a fire ignite inside me. You don't get to decide when I leave, I said firmly. Trevor glanced at me, his expression hardening. Monica, why drag this out? We both know it's over. Danny stood protectively beside me. Mom has sacrificed everything for this family. She deserves better than to be thrown out like garbage. Erica nodded in agreement. Dad, if you can't see that, then you're more lost than we thought. Trevor looked taken aback by their united front. Jasmine, however, remained unfazed. Fine, stick around if you want, Monica, but just know, Trevor and I are moving forward with our life, with or without your consent. Erica turned to me, her eyes pleading. Mom, please, talk to an attorney. Protect yourself. I nodded slowly, feeling the strength their support provided. You're right. I need to start protecting myself. The rest of the day passed in strained silence, with Trevor and Jasmine acting as if nothing had changed. Later that evening, as I hugged Erica and Danny goodbye, I felt a newfound resolve. I'll be okay, I assured them, watching them drive away. That night, I dialed David, the divorce attorney Lisa had recommended. Mr. David, I need your help, I said, gripping the phone tightly. Of course, Monica. Let's get you through this, he responded, his voice calm and reassuring. As I ended the call, I glanced around the home I'd spent decades building. I knew this was just the beginning, but with Erica and Danny's unwavering support, I was ready to face the storm head-on. David slid a stack of papers across his desk. These are your rights, Monica, he explained. You deserve a fair settlement, property, alimony. Don't settle for less. I nodded, absorbing his words. Thanks, David. I just don't know where to begin. One step at a time, he assured me. We'll start with the divorce papers. Have Trevor served. It's critical that you protect yourself immediately. I appreciate that, I replied, holding the papers tightly as if they were a lifeline. Back at home, tension hung thick in the air. Trevor and Jasmine were in the living room, their laughter grating on my nerves. I took a deep breath and entered. Trevor, I said, my voice steady. I'm serving you with divorce papers. I've contacted a lawyer, and I'll be moving forward. His laughter stopped abruptly, replaced by a look of surprise. You're serious? He asked, bewildered. Jasmine scoffed, leaning back on the couch. Finally growing a backbone, Monica? How quaint! Ignoring her, I kept my eyes locked on Trevor. Yes, I'm serious. I deserve better than this. Trevor stood up, his face reddening. Where do you plan to go? You have no job, no money. How do you think you'll survive? I'm reactivating my nursing license, I announced. I can take care of myself, and I'll get back to working. Jasmine's laughter was sharp. You? Go back to work? Good luck with that. I straightened my shoulders, refusing to be intimidated. Watch me. Over the next few days, I poured myself into making preparations. I contacted my old nursing school, signed up for refresher courses, and updated my resume. Each small victory felt like a step toward reclaiming my life. One evening, as I pored over coursework at the kitchen table, Trevor walked in. Monica, this is ridiculous. You won't last a week as a nurse, he scoffed. I'll take that chance, I replied without looking up. Jasmine appeared behind him, smirking. You're really determined to prove us wrong, huh? It's almost admirable. Almost, Trevor added with a sneer. Ignoring their jabs, I received an email from a nearby clinic looking for part-time nurses. A smile crept onto my face. I have an interview tomorrow, I announced. Trevor rolled his eyes. Good luck with that. Don't come crying when you fail. The next day I walked into the clinic, heart pounding. The interview went smoothly, the familiarity of the medical environment settling my nerves. I knew I could do this. Leaving the clinic, I felt lighter, my steps more confident. Later, as I packed some of my belongings, I came across an old photo of Trevor and me on our wedding day. I stared at it for a moment before placing it in the box labeled Past. That night, I called Erica and Danny, sharing the day's events. I'm so proud of you, Mom, Erica said, her voice filled with joy. Danny chuckled, adding, You're showing them you're stronger than they ever thought. Their support filled me with a renewed determination. I knew the road ahead would be challenging, but I was ready. The next chapter of my life was beginning, and I wasn't looking back. "Trevor, we need to talk," I said, standing firm in the living room, holding the finalized divorce papers. Trevor looked up from the TV, an annoyed expression on his face. "What now, Monica?" "These are the terms," I stated, handing him the documents. "I'll be taking half of the assets, and I want alimony. It's non-negotiable." Trevor's face reddened as he scanned the papers. "You've got to be kidding me. You really think you deserve this?" Jasmine sauntered over, peering over his shoulder. "She thinks she's entitled to it, which is laughable." I clenched my fists, trying to keep my composure. "I've given 25 years of my life to you and this family, Trevor. I deserve what I'm asking for." Trevor threw the papers onto the coffee table. "You won't get a dime more than I'm willing to give. This is outrageous." Jasmine's smug smile widened. "Good luck getting anything from us, Monica." David had prepared me for this resistance. I stood my ground. "Then we'll settle this in court. I have every right to what I've requested." Trevor's eyes blazed with anger. "Do you really want to drag this out and make it ugly for everyone? Did you ever stop to think about that before you brought her into our life?" I shot back, my voice rising. "You made this ugly, not me." Jasmine rolled her eyes. "We don't have time for your drama, Monica. We've got wedding plans to make." "Wedding plans?" Erica's voice came from the hallway. She and Danny had just come in, their expressions filled with disbelief. "Unbelievable," Danny muttered, shaking his head. Trevor squared his shoulders, trying to regain control. "We're moving on, so should you." Erica stepped forward, her eyes blazing. "How can you be so heartless, Dad? Mom deserves respect. You both are acting like this is some kind of game." "We've made our decision," Jasmine retorted. "Monica, it would be best if you just accepted it." I took a deep breath, looking at my children. "I'm not backing down. I'll fight for what's right." Danny put a comforting hand on my shoulder. "We're with you, Mom. Don't let them intimidate you." Trevor threw up his hands in frustration. "Fine, do whatever you want. But know this, Monica, you'll regret it." Jasmine smirked as she linked her arm with Trevor's. "You're making a mistake." "I made a mistake letting you into my life," I countered, "but I won't make the mistake of not standing up for myself. Leaving them in the living room, I walked towards the door, Erica and Danny beside me. For the first time in a long while, I felt genuinely supported. "Let's go," Erica said, her voice filled with determination. "We'll get through this together." That night, as I packed more of my belongings, I felt a sense of closure. The divorce papers were served, and I was more determined than ever to rebuild my life. I glanced back at the house one last time. It had been my prison, but now it represented a past I was ready to leave behind. I walked out with my head held high. This was the beginning of my new life, free from Trevor and his betrayal. I was ready for whatever came next. With Erica and Danny by my side, I knew I could face anything. The small, charming apartment felt vastly different from the sprawling house I had left behind. Boxes were scattered around, half unpacked, but there was a lightness in the air, a feeling of liberation. I set down a framed photo of Erica and Danny on the mantel, smiling to myself. The weekend had been a whirl of moving and settling in, with Erica and Danny helping every step of the way. Now, in the quiet of my new space, I could finally breathe again. I received a text from Lisa. "Welcome to your new freedom. Dinner to celebrate?" "Yes," I typed back, feeling grateful for her constant support. As I started unpacking the kitchen, my phone buzzed again. This time it was from the clinic. "Congratulations, Monica. You've got the job. Start next week." Relief washed over me. I had just landed a part-time nursing job. This was the beginning of something beautiful. Later that evening, Lisa arrived with a bottle of wine. "To new beginnings," she toasted, raising her glass. I clinked mine with hers and took a sip. "Thank you for everything, Lisa. I couldn't have done it without you." "You're stronger than you give yourself credit for," she replied, squeezing my hand. By Monday, I was already settling into my new routine. I joined a yoga class at the local community center and signed up for a book club. It felt good to be reconnecting with old passions. That week, I walked into the clinic, greeted by the hustle and bustle of healthcare. The familiar scent of antiseptics and the hum of activity was oddly comforting. Julie, a nurse colleague, introduced herself. "Welcome back to the field, Monica. It's great to have you on board." Thanks, Julie. It's good to be back, I replied, feeling a sense of purpose return. Throughout the day, I dived into work, grateful for the distraction. It wasn't easy, but it felt rewarding. During lunch break, Carol, a member of the book club, joined me. You must be Monica. Heard great things, excited to discuss some good reads with you. I look forward to it, I said, smiling warmly. At the end of the day, I walked out of the clinic with an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. For the first time in years, I felt valued for my own skills and hard work. One night, as I returned from yoga, I found Erica waiting for me in my living room. Thought I'd drop by and see how you're settling in, she said, embracing me. I'm doing well, actually, I replied, returning the hug. Thanks to you and Danny. Erica looked around the apartment. This place feels more like home. You really seem happier. I am, I confessed. I didn't know how much I needed this. We chatted for hours, sharing stories and laughter. It felt good, finally reconnecting with my daughter beyond the turmoil of the divorce. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself growing more comfortable in my skin, enjoying my independence. One evening after work, I received a call from Danny. Guess what, Mom? I got an internship offer in the city near you. That's wonderful news, Danny, I exclaimed, thrilled by the opportunity to see him more often. Looks like life is finally going our way, he said with a grin in his voice. I stood by the window, looking out at the bustling life outside. The chapter with Trevor was over, but a new one had just begun. For the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful and excited about the future. My life was blossoming, and I was determined to make the most of every new opportunity. Months flew by in a blur of work, yoga, and book club meetings. One afternoon, as I enjoyed a coffee with Lisa at the local cafe, she leaned in conspiratorially. Have you heard the latest about Trevor and Jasmine? No. What's up? I asked, curiosity piqued. Lisa grinned. It's all over town. Their marriage is falling apart. Jasmine's been calling everyone, complaining about Trevor. I took a slow sip of my coffee, letting her words sink in. Really? What did she expect? Marrying a man who cheated on his wife? As if summoned by our conversation, my phone buzzed. The screen flashed. Jasmine. I hesitated before answering. Hello? Monica, it's Jasmine. Her voice was tense, almost desperate. I need to talk to you. What for? I asked, surprised by my own indifference. Please, it's important. Can we meet? Fine, I agreed, more out of curiosity than anything else. The cafe near my place in an hour. I hung up and turned to Lisa. This should be interesting. An hour later, I spotted Jasmine at the cafe, looking frazzled and exhausted. She was a far cry from the confident woman who had invaded my life months ago. Thanks for meeting me, she started, wringing her hands. Get to the point, Jasmine. I have a life to get back to, I said, leaning back in my chair. It's Trevor. He's impossible to live with. Lazy, controlling, and completely useless with our baby, she blurted out, her voice cracking. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, and what did you expect? Jasmine's eyes filled with tears. I thought he'd be different with me, but I was wrong. He's a nightmare. I don't know what to do. I felt a strange sense of satisfaction, but kept my tone neutral. Maybe you should have thought about that before breaking up a family. Monica, please, she pleaded. I don't know how to handle this. I stood up, feeling an overwhelming surge of empowerment. You made your bed, Jasmine. Now you have to lie in it. I warned you about the consequences. Goodbye. As I walked away, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Karma had finally come knocking, and it was not my job to clean up the mess it left behind. The next day at the clinic, Julie caught me during lunch. I heard someone's having trouble at home, she said with a knowing look. News travels fast, I replied, smiling. Want to grab a drink after work? You could use a distraction, she suggested. Sounds perfect, I agreed. Later that evening, as we clinked glasses at a cozy bar nearby, I realized how far I had come. Surrounded by genuine friends and flourishing in my own career, I felt a sense of pride and contentment that had been missing for years. That night, I returned to my apartment with the contentment that I had been lacking for years. I knew that this new chapter of my life was just beginning, and I was ready for whatever came next. It had been almost a year since I left Trevor, and my life had taken a turn for the better. My small apartment felt like home, and my job at the clinic was fulfilling. Erica and Danny visited often, bringing laughter and vitality into my space. One evening, Erica and I were getting ready to head to a concert, something we hadn't done together in years. "Mom, you look amazing," Erica said, smiling as she adjusted her earrings in my living room mirror. "Thanks, sweetie. It feels good to go out and enjoy life," I replied, slipping on my favorite pair of shoes. Just then, there was a knock on the door. I furrowed my brow. Who could that be? I opened the door to find Trevor standing there, looking disheveled and desperate. "Monica, can we talk?" Erica's expression hardened. "Dad, now isn't the time." Ignoring her, Trevor stepped inside, his eyes pleading. "Monica, please, I made a mistake. Leaving you was the worst decision of my life. Can we try again?" I blinked, taken aback by his sudden change of heart. "You have some nerve, Trevor, after everything you put me through?" He nodded, appearing genuinely remorseful. "I know, Monica, I was wrong. Jasmine, it was a disaster. I want to make things right." Erica stepped between us, her voice steely. "Dad, Mom has moved on. She doesn't need you to fix anything." Trevor's gaze shifted to Erica, then back to me. "I can't change the past, but I'm asking for a second chance." I took a deep breath, feeling a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, but most of all a newfound strength. "Trevor, you shattered our family and treated me with utter disrespect. I've rebuilt my life, and it's better without you. There's no going back." His face fell, but I felt only relief. "Please, Monica," he whispered. "No, Trevor," I said firmly. "You need to face the consequences of your actions. It's time for you to move on, just like I have." Erica nodded in agreement. "It's over, Dad. You need to respect that." Trevor stood there for a moment, looking defeated. Finally, he turned and walked out without another word, closing the door softly behind him. As he left, I felt an overwhelming sense of release and clarity. Erica hugged me tightly. "You did the right thing, Mom. You deserve so much better." "I know," I replied, my voice clear and resolved, "and I'm ready to embrace it." Later at the concert, surrounded by music and joy, I felt truly free. Erica and I danced and laughed, creating new memories. Standing in the middle of the crowd, I looked around and realized how far I had come. With my daughter by my side and a world of opportunities ahead, I felt a deep sense of fulfillment. My past with Trevor was now a closed chapter. The future was mine to shape, and I was eager to fill it with happiness and growth. As the night ended and we walked back to my apartment, I looked at Erica and smiled. "Here's to new beginnings," I said, my heart light and hopeful. "Here's to your revival, Mom," Erica replied, squeezing my hand. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly at peace, ready to embrace whatever came next with a joyful, open heart.
I've always loved San Francisco. There's something about this city that feels like it's constantly alive, bustling with possibilities and hidden stories. I'm Maya, a 30-year-old graphic designer, and my life here has been a blend of work, quiet moments, and unexpected turns. I live alone in a chic, modern apartment that I'm proud to call my own. It's not huge, but it's perfect for me. The best part is its location, just a short walk from the design firm where I spend most of my days. My job is my passion. I dive into my work with an intensity that often surprises me. Each project feels like a new adventure, a chance to create something unique and meaningful. On weekends, when I need to escape the buzz of the city, I head to a small park nearby. It's my sanctuary. The park isn't anything extraordinary, just a patch of green amid the concrete, but it's where I find peace. The tall trees and chirping birds offer a kind of quiet that's hard to find elsewhere in the city. It's here that I find solace and inspiration, a place where I can think and recharge. One crisp autumn afternoon, while I was enjoying the usual tranquility of the park, everything changed. I was lost in thought, sketching ideas for a new project, when a sudden commotion jolted me out of my reverie. I looked up to see a man sprawled on the grass, looking a bit disoriented. "Are you all right?" I asked, rushing over to him. The man, who looked to be in his mid-30s, blinked up at me. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just tripped over my own feet," he said with a sheepish grin. His name was Jake, and as it turned out, he worked in real estate. Jake had a charisma about him that was hard to ignore. His outgoing personality contrasted sharply with my more reserved nature. Over the next few weeks, we kept running into each other in the park. What started as casual conversations soon blossomed into something more. We went from chatting about the weather to sharing stories over coffee. Our weekends began to revolve around each other, And before long, our time together extended into late-night dinners and even full weekends spent exploring the city. Our relationship progressed quickly. It felt natural and exciting, but also a bit overwhelming. One day, Jake proposed that we move in together. I was caught off guard. The idea of merging my life with someone else's was daunting, but I couldn't deny how much I cared for him. After some thought, I agreed. We found a larger apartment in a new part of the city, one with bright rooms and an airy feel that symbolized a fresh start for us. Moving in together was supposed to be a new beginning, but soon I noticed cracks in our seemingly perfect life. It started subtly. Jake suggested that I should cut back on my work hours to focus more on our home and our relationship. At first, I thought he was joking, but as he continued to press the issue, I realized he was serious. I was taken aback. My work meant everything to me. It wasn't just a job, it was a big part of who I was. The thought of stepping back from my career felt like losing a piece of myself. I tried to balance both, but the tension was palpable. The situation was further complicated by Jake's mother, Mrs. Harrison, who lived nearby. She visited often, and her presence added another layer of stress to our relationship. Mrs. Harrison, a woman in her early 60s, was kind but had strong traditional views about gender roles. Her comments about homemaking and prioritizing family over work made me feel as though my career was being dismissed as insignificant. Jake seemed to align with his mother's views more and more, and the strain began to show. Despite the growing pressure, I tried to stay optimistic. I found myself constantly juggling between fulfilling my work responsibilities and trying to meet the expectations set by Jake and his mother. It was like walking a tightrope, and I felt like I was about to fall off. One night, after a particularly long day at work, I sat in our new apartment feeling overwhelmed. I realized that I was losing sight of myself. My independence, which had always been my strength, was slipping away. It was in this moment of clarity that I decided I needed to do something to preserve my sense of self while navigating this new, challenging phase of my life. And so began a silent act of rebellion. I made a decision to pretend that I had quit my job while continuing to work from home. I set up a separate savings account to stash away money for my freelance projects. It was a way to reclaim a part of my life, a small, private rebellion against the pressure I was feeling. Little did I know, this decision would set the stage for a confrontation that would change everything. I thought moving in with Jake would be a new adventure, a chance to build something meaningful together. But as the weeks turned into months, the excitement of our new apartment began to wear off, revealing underlying issues we hadn't fully addressed. Jake's suggestions about my career continued. He would casually bring up the idea of me reducing my work hours, always framing it as a way to enhance our relationship. "It would be nice if you could be around more," he'd say, his voice filled with genuine concern. "We could use more time together. Maybe even work on making our place feel more like home." At first, I tried to brush it off. I thought maybe it was just a phase. But the more he brought it up, the more I felt like my independence was being chipped away. Balancing my job with the demands of our relationship was becoming increasingly difficult. I loved Jake, but I loved my work too. It was a core part of who I was. Things took a turn for the worse when Jake's mother, Mrs. Harrison, started visiting more frequently. Her visits were always polite, but they carried an underlying tension. Mrs. Harrison had her own ideas about how a woman should prioritize her life, and it seemed her opinions were influencing Jake more than I realized. One day, as I was preparing dinner, Mrs. Harrison stopped by unexpectedly. She looked around the kitchen and made a comment that stung. "It's important to make a home feel warm and inviting. You know, keeping things organized and spending time on it can really make a difference," she said, her tone casual but her words heavy with implication. I smiled tightly, trying to keep my composure. "I agree, Mrs. Harrison. I've been working on making it a comfortable place for us." "Oh, I'm sure you're doing your best," she replied, but there was a note of disapproval in her voice. "Sometimes, though, it's better to focus more on creating a nurturing environment at home rather than being too engrossed in work." The conversation left me feeling frustrated and trapped. Jake and I had never discussed this level of interference from his mother, and it seemed like he was aligning with her traditional views more and more. I began to feel like an outsider in my own home. I tried to adapt. I cut back on some work hours and focused more on the house, but it felt like a part of me was shrinking. Despite my efforts, the strain between us grew. Jake would often bring up how my work was keeping me away from our relationship. "You're always busy, Maya. Can't you take a break?" he'd say. The final straw came one evening when we had a particularly heated argument. Jake was frustrated, and his irritation bubbled over. "You don't support me or our future," he yelled. "You're always prioritizing your job over us. This isn't what I envisioned for us." I was devastated. I felt like I was being pulled in two different directions, torn between my love for Jake and my passion for my career. It seemed like nothing I did was ever enough. The pressure was relentless, and I was running out of ways to keep everything balanced. In a desperate bid to retain some control over my life, I decided to take a drastic step. I began to pretend that I had quit my job. Behind closed doors, I continued to work on freelance projects, setting up a separate savings account to stash away the money I earned. It was a secret rebellion, a way to keep a piece of my independence while trying to meet the expectations placed on me. Even though this plan provided me with a small sense of control, it added another layer of stress. Keeping up the pretense was exhausting. I had to be careful about when and how I worked, always making sure not to slip up. The emotional toll was immense, and it was becoming harder to maintain the facade. Jake's growing frustration was becoming more apparent. The tension between us reached a breaking point during one of his drunken outbursts. He accused me of undermining his vision for our future, insisting that I conform to his and his mother's expectations. It was a painful confrontation that left me questioning whether this relationship was worth the cost to my own well-being. I started to realize that no matter how much I tried to please everyone, I was losing myself in the process. The facade of harmony was cracking, and beneath it lay the painful truth that something had to change. I had to make a choice, one that would require me to confront the reality of my situation and decide what I truly wanted for my future. The atmosphere at home was growing more oppressive. Every day, it felt like I was walking on eggshells, trying to keep up the pretense of quitting my job while secretly working from home. The strain was taking its toll on me, and Jake's frustrations were becoming more frequent and intense. One evening, Jake came home late, his mood sour and his words sharp. He had been drinking, and it was clear that he was more than just tipsy. I could see the frustration in his eyes as he staggered into the living room. "Why are you still working?" he demanded, his voice slurring slightly. "I thought you were going to focus on our life together." I tried to stay calm. "I'm not working. I've told you, I'm focusing on us. I'm just tidying up some things." "Don't lie to me, Maya." His voice rose, and I could see the anger boiling over. "You're always working, always busy. What's the point of this if you can't even commit to us?" I was taken aback by his accusation. "I'm doing everything I can.
But this isn't just about me.
It's about us. I'm trying to balance both, but it's not easy." Jake's face flushed with rage. "Balance? It feels like you're always putting your work first. You're not supporting me or our relationship. You've changed, Maya." The words hit me hard. They were a reminder of everything that was wrong, of the constant pressure I felt to give up a part of myself for the sake of our relationship. But it wasn't just Jake's anger. It was his growing alignment with his mother's views that was causing the real conflict. His mother, Mrs. Harrison, had been visiting more often, her comments becoming sharper and more pointed. One day, while Jake was at work, she came by to discuss the progress of our new life together. She looked around the apartment with a critical eye, her disapproval evident. "You know," she said, "a woman's role is important in a home. It's about creating a warm and welcoming space. I hope you're not letting your work interfere with that." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I'm doing my best to balance everything, Mrs. Harrison." She nodded, but there was a hint of satisfaction in her eyes. "Well, it's important to make sure that your priorities are in the right place. A home needs a woman's touch." The pressure from Jake and his mother was relentless. It felt like I was being squeezed from all sides, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't meet their expectations without losing myself in the process. I was caught in a cycle of pretending and compromising, and it was beginning to break me down. The final confrontation came one night after a particularly intense argument. Jake was drunk again, his emotions raw and unfiltered. We were in the middle of a heated exchange when he suddenly shouted, "If you can't support me and our future, then what are we even doing here? I can't keep living like this." His words were like a knife to my heart. I felt a deep, crushing sense of realization. I couldn't keep living under this pressure. The constant struggle to maintain a facade, the relentless push to conform to someone else's expectations, it was all too much. In the heat of the moment, I made a decision that would change everything. "Maybe you're right," I said, my voice trembling. "Maybe this isn't working. I can't keep living like this." Jake's face showed a mixture of anger and disbelief. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" I nodded, feeling tears well up. "I can't do this anymore. I need to find a way to be true to myself. I'm sorry, but I need to leave." The look on Jake's face was a mix of shock and fury. "You're just going to walk away?" "I'm not walking away from you," I said, my voice firm despite the tears. "I'm walking away from a life that's making me lose myself." That night, I packed a few bags with the essentials and made arrangements to stay with a friend. The decision wasn't easy, and it felt like I was tearing a piece of my heart away. But deep down, I knew it was the only way I could reclaim my independence and start rebuilding my life on my own terms. As I walked out of the apartment, I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. The life I had tried so hard to build was unraveling, but in its place, I was beginning to see a glimmer of hope. I had taken the first step toward finding myself again, even if it meant facing an uncertain future. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. I settled into a small apartment of my own, a cozy space that felt like a blank canvas for a new beginning. I returned to my graphic design work, and my colleagues welcomed me back with open arms. Their support was a balm to my soul, and it reminded me of why I had chosen this path in the first place. I threw myself back into my career with renewed passion. My work became a source of joy and empowerment. It was a relief to focus solely on projects that mattered to me, without the constant pressure to prioritize someone else's expectations. I started to explore new hobbies, painting, hiking, and even cooking, which had always been on the back burner. It felt exhilarating to rediscover parts of myself that had been overshadowed by my previous relationship. One day, while I was at a coffee shop, I ran into old friends. It was wonderful to reconnect with them and share stories about our lives. They were genuinely happy to see me and were curious about my new beginnings. It felt good to share my journey and receive their encouragement. It was a reminder that I had not only lost myself in the past relationship but also gained a new sense of clarity and purpose. Months later, Jake reached out to me. I was surprised to receive a message from him, especially since I had not heard from him since moving out. He was candid about his struggles, including losing his job and feeling lost without me. He expressed a desire to talk and possibly rekindle our relationship. I was tempted to meet with him, to see if there was any way to find closure or understanding. However, after reflecting on everything I had been through, I realized that my life had taken a new direction. I had found a stronger sense of self-worth and clarity about what I wanted. The idea of going back to a relationship that had caused me so much pain seemed like a step backward. When we finally met, Jake was visibly different. He seemed older, more worn out, and his demeanor was one of regret. He apologized for how he had treated me and admitted that he had made mistakes. But as we talked, I knew deep down that the relationship we had was not something I wanted to revisit. "I've changed a lot," Jake said, his voice filled with remorse. "I realize now how much I took you for granted. I'm sorry for everything." I took a deep breath, feeling a mix of sadness and relief. "I appreciate your apology, Jake, but I've grown a lot since we parted ways. I'm in a different place now, and I need to keep moving forward." He nodded, understanding my decision. "I get it, Maya. I hope you find the happiness you're looking for." As I walked away from that meeting, I felt a profound sense of closure. I was finally free from the shadows of my past, ready to embrace the future with confidence. I had reclaimed my independence and learned to value myself in ways I hadn't before. My journey of self-discovery had been challenging, but it had led me to a place of personal fulfillment and happiness. The story of my life had come full circle, and I was ready to write the next chapter with a heart full of hope and a mind clear about what truly mattered to me.